Hi, friends. Here we are, our Hollywood Progressive team back at it. Last night we saw Rent, the iconic, uh, uh, what would you call rock opera from 30 years ago that's playing at the Chance Theater in Anaheim through August 20th. It tells a story of a group of a dozen or so friends living in the East Village of New York in the 1980s under the cloud of the AIDS epidemic and how they deal with the fact that some of them have AIDS and all of them fear they might get it, and drug addiction and scrambling as young people to make it in the world. It's quite a moving performance. It marks the 25th anniversary of the Chance Theater. You were there, Sugar. What did you have to say? Oh no, I guess Neo is going to go first.
Um, yeah, so this was actually, despite having theater a part of my life all through high school and beyond, this was actually my first time ever seeing any rendition of Rent. Chance Theater had a really lovely theater. I think we all really enjoyed the space. The set was phenomenal, probably one of the best, most built out, well thought out sets that I think we've seen. Um, I will say, so this was a musical through and through, based off of like an operetta style musical with very little dialogue. I think maybe there were two lines of spoken speech, and the rest was all sung. Absolutely wonderful voice talents, some amazing voices coming from this cast. The energy was uncomparable. I've seen many a musical in my life, I've seen many a show in my life. The amount of energy this crew brought to this show was went far beyond anything I've ever seen, we've ever seen together as Hollywood Progressive. The chemistry between all the actors was also um, otherworldly. Everyone knew where everyone was. There was no, accidentally bumping into each other. You could see the camaraderie. Everyone was reacting to each other really naturally. A very well put together an execution of it. I will say that I felt that there were some struggles with volumes and mic volumes versus the music and things like that. It made it really hard for me, having never seen the show, not really even knowing much about it beyond the fact that it's a theater sensation in the theater world. It's one of those shows that everyone always talks about and brings up. Not having any context to the story, I did find it pretty difficult to sort of grab the pieces based on context and put the storyline together. But it was for that to be the issue. I think that's we've seen other plays with bigger concerns in them. So I really enjoyed it. I had a really great time. And I know from, because this was during the absolutely awful AIDS epidemic and height of the gay craze and everyone blaming homosexuals for all of these problems. And I know from, living with Sharon for 20 years that she's been in my life or so, she had more of a personal connection. And I remember thinking, I'm curious to see how she reacted. And I'd love for you to share your thoughts now, Sharon.
Yeah,
I'm
thanks.
curious.
Yeah, so the play was it was very surprising how excellent it was. The performances, the songs, obviously the songs were the songs from Rent, and the music is just amazing. And it's important to note that this is a rock opera, so it's different than a musical, because it's an opera. Really, there is no real there's no narrative, no spoken narrative. It's all sung, and Rent really just does an awesome job. I was really shocked that this small little theater in Orange County could do something that was just so amazing. The costumes, the energy, I'm actually tired today. I'm tired from watching it. But aside from that, I am tired today. But aside from that, it did put me back in the feelings, what it was like to live through the 80s. And I was born and raised in New York. I actually moved away from New York in the 70s. And so during the 80s, when the AIDS epidemic hit, it hit the entire country. But obviously, New York and San Francisco were really devastated. And the people who lived in New York and in San Francisco, barely anyone could get away from being impacted by it. I don't know anyone that didn't know someone whose family wasn't impacted, and mine was pretty much devastated. My life was turned upside down. And I lost several family members to AIDS. And the person who helped to raise me, who was my uncle, who died in 1989, I've spoken of him often. He worked at the Metropolitan, at the American Ballet Theater, and also the Metropolitan Opera, and lived around the corner from the Met. And his whole world was kind of wrapped up in that. So, the artist community was impacted. The gay community, the artist community, intravenous drug users, people who had received blood transfusions. And I was explaining to Nia that I myself had received a blood transfusion in 1979. And so many of us were just terrified, didn't know, what our status was when they learned how the disease was transmitted. There was just a sort of a blanket over New York, a dark blanket over New York. And I spent a year during the final year of my uncle's life, going back and forth to New York, staying with him. And finally he died in Roosevelt Hospital on 59th Street and 10th Avenue in New York in October 27th, 1989. So that play did a great job of capturing what it felt like. And it really did kind of take me back into what life was like then, and it was not good. It's interesting because the play, which is a rock opera, is the modern day version of La Boheme. And La Boheme was, I believe it's a Puccini opera, which was about Paris, and they use a lot of the same characters' names in the movie. I mean, in the opera. The Paris version was supposed to have taken place. It was set in like the 1830s or 40s. And the disease that they were struggling with was tuberculosis and poverty and artists. So it was the same kind of situation. People were living in the hotbed of the artist community in Paris, as opposed to New York, where rent is taking place. People were being evicted in Paris. It was in the middle of winter, and they were dying from tuberculosis. So that's a pretty sad note, but it was beautifully performed. I don't really have a critical word to say about it. And I would definitely highly recommend anyone should go to this Chance Theater. It's a wonderful little theater. I couldn't believe it. Boy.
Truly, it blew us away. Even just walking in the door, we were all three of us. Where are we?
It's in Orange County, for goodness sake.
Yeah, so I was blown away. I have not, unlike Nia and perhaps Sharon, I've not attended a lot of musicals. It wasn't my thing ever in my life. I did love the theater. We prefer small theaters, but this is kind of a small theater in a large theater. Indeed, it had just maybe less than 100 seats, but a broad stage, so well directed, it looked like the inside of a Manhattan loft. And
it was just missing the rats.
And you got the spirit of those times. So I ran a halfway house in the 80s and knew I knew men who I knew a couple guys who killed themselves because they had AIDS at a time when there was no known cure for AIDS, and it was known that it was a very ugly way to die, and they killed themselves, and I knew that a lot of people, whether these two fellas probably caught it by exchanging needles in prison, but whether they were gay and women were getting it through their male partners and through male exchanges or needle exchanges. And there was just a pall on in certain communities, certainly the LGBT community, but well beyond that, and kind of the music and the dealing with drugs the way they did in the play, it put me back in that spirit.
Yeah, it was in the artistic community, because I was thinking, you were saying you weren't raised around. Well, I was raised around the Met, and my uncle worked for the Metropolitan Opera and the American Ballet Theater. He was a makeup artist, so I saw lots of opera. I had season opera tickets before I met you. I used to go to the opera and I used to go to the ballet quite regularly. But actually, it was AIDS that kind of made me not want to go around it, because it would just bring back so many memories. So for the longest, and in fact, I have not been to a ballet performance since my uncle passed away. And I used to just hang out there. I'd be in the dressing rooms, and of course, I'd be in the wings. And but
yeah, so I was really taken. Well, so there's 15 characters, all they sing in duets and in ensembles and solos, but I really liked the choreography. I mean, the stage moved the whole time and they had this big broad stage that sometimes in other cases hasn't worked out well, but this was like there would be a couple up here having an argument and 4 people over here having a meal, and it really kept you going. I even though my hearing is next to perfect, I did have some trouble with some of the sung words, especially the ensemble songs in the first act. But I noticed, this is like an iconic play, or it's a spectacular that many people go to over and over and over, and it's kind of like you and the Godfather. You've gone to see Godfather movies countless times, and there's other people that see Rocky Horror Movie Show over and over, and we saw that in this audience last night there were a fair number of people, when the cast said to sing along with something, oh, the audience was on it. They knew it. And so I think that, if you saw that play again, part of the problem I had was there's so many 15 characters, and 5 of them or 6 of them main ones, and there's overlapping love affairs and struggles with parents, and it was a little hard keeping track of exactly what was going on until kind of the end, when the various threads come together in a sort of heartrending way. Terribly moving. Much congratulations to the Chance Theater on 25 years. I don't know how they do it with a small number of seats. They must be really good at fundraising. Really a good time. That's really what I have to say.
Yep, me too.
Yeah, absolutely wonderful. Go see it. If you haven't seen Rent before, go see it here. Even me not knowing the story beforehand and struggling with hearing some of the things, it was still an absolute joy to watch and be a part of. You got swept up in the energy of the actors, and you could just tell everyone on stage was having a fantastic time, which means the audience had a fantastic time.
Yeah.
Definitely go see it and check out the theater.
They looked like they were having a ball together, didn't they?
Absolutely.
Oftentimes casts at least present that they're having a good time together, but this group of 15 people, you could tell they really were, and they must have had to work their tails off to do all the many songs and all the dance steps and all the movements, to keep track of all that stuff. Boy, oh boy, I love this kind of stuff.
Phenomenal.
It was fantastic. So I think my uncle, if he is looking down, he's like giving it a thumbs up. His name was Leopold Allen, if anyone wants to Google him. Leopold Allen, American Ballet Theater.
Okay, we'll see what's up. We'll come back with our next extravaganza. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, Nia. Bye-bye.
Bye.